Her planet was beautiful until I saw what it took from me. The luminous embrace. The emergency landing protocols blared through the cramped cockpit as Dr. Leona Voss fought to maintain control of her research vessel. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she pulled desperately at the controls, the purple-hued atmosphere of Nyx swirling outside her viewscreen. Mayday, Mayday. This is Xenobiological Research Vessel Delta 7, she called into the comms. Engine failure during atmospheric entry to planet Nyx 429, attempting emergency landing procedures. Only static answered. Of course, she was too far from any relay stations. The vessel shuddered violently as it plunged through cloud layers, systems failing one by one. Not how I planned this expedition, Leona muttered, securing her harness. The ground rushed up to meet her, a landscape of twisting luminescent flora that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. Impact came with a deafening crash. Pain exploded across her temple and darkness claimed her. Consciousness returned in fragments. First, the scent of something like cinnamon and ozone. Then, a cool, damp cloth against her forehead. Finally, eyes the color of amber honey peering down at her with concern. Leona gasped, recoiling. The owner of those eyes, a tall, humanoid figure with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to pulse with internal light, stepped back, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "You're safe," he said, his voice melodious with an accent she couldn't place. "Your vessel crashed, I found you." Her scientific instincts kicked in despite the throbbing pain in her head. This was a Nyxian, the very species she'd been sent to study. Bipedal, remarkably human-like in form, but with skin that contained bioluminescent properties. Theoretical xenobiology made real before her eyes. "You speak my language," she managed, voice hoarse. A slight smile curved his lips. "We learn quickly, I'm Thorn." Dr. Leona Voss, xenobiologist. She tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that lanced through her ribs. "My ship." "Beyond repair, I'm afraid. But you're welcome in our settlement until your people come for you." Leona's heart sank. The expedition hadn't planned to check in with her for another 3 months. No one would be looking for her anytime soon. "Can I see what's left of my vessel, my equipment?" "Soon," Thorn promised. "First you heal." Days passed in the settlement, a collection of graceful structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than impose upon it. The buildings pulsed with the same bioluminescence as their inhabitants, casting the nights in gentle, shifting colors that never required artificial light. As her injuries healed, Leona found herself increasingly captivated by Nyxian society. No conflict, no struggle for resources, no hierarchical posturing. The inhabitants moved through their lives with purpose and contentment. "How is this possible?" she asked Thorn one evening as they walked along a path bordered by plants that glowed electric blue. "No society I've encountered functions with this level of harmony." Thorn's skin rippled with shades of purple, an expression of amusement she'd learned. "Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong places," he suggested, "or perhaps Nyx is special." Something in his tone made her wonder if there was more to his words, but the thought slipped away as a floating orb of light, some kind of native fauna, drifted past them. Leona reached out, letting it brush her fingertips with a tingle of energy. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "As are you," Thorn replied, his amber eyes reflecting the glow around them. Leona felt her cheeks warm. Professional boundaries seemed increasingly meaningless here, so far from Earth and its regulations. What harm was there in exploring this connection? 2 weeks into her stay, Leona noticed the first anomaly. She'd been writing in her journal, documenting observations about Nyxian biology, when she reached for the name of an Earth compound to use as a comparison. It wasn't there. The word, a basic scientific term she'd used countless times, had vanished from her mind. She frowned, setting down her stylus. "Something wrong?" Thorne asked from across the room, where he'd been preparing a meal of local fruits. I can't remember something I should know, she admitted. Probably just the concussion from the crash. Thorne nodded, but something flickered across his features. Concern. Guilt. Before she could analyze it further, he brought her a plate of star-shaped fruits that tasted like honey and summer rain. After that, the lapses came more frequently. The name of her childhood pet, the layout of the research station where she'd trained, scientific procedures she'd performed hundreds of times. Yet strangely, the gaps didn't frighten her as much as they should have. Each forgotten memory seemed less important than the wonders surrounding her on Nyx and the deepening connection with Thorne. You never speak of your world's problems, Thorne observed one day as they harvested glowing sap from the massive trees that surrounded the settlement. Leona paused, container in hand. What do you mean? Disease, war, environmental collapse, the things that drove your species to the stars. She frowned, trying to recall Earth's troubles. There had been conflicts, certainly, environmental issues, though the specifics seemed blurry now. We have problems, she said slowly. Everyone does. Do they? Thorne's skin pulsed with deep blue curiosity. Or is that simply what you've been taught to expect? The question lingered as they continued their work. That night, unable to sleep, Leona tried to picture her apartment back on Earth. The layout eluded her. Her colleagues' faces had become indistinct blurs. Even her specialization, the very reason she'd been sent to Nyx, seemed less critical than immersing herself in this world. She should be terrified by these gaps. Instead, she felt lighter without the burden of those memories. Dance with me, Thorne said one evening, extending his hand. The settlement was celebrating some astronomical event, music flowing from instruments unlike any Leona had seen before. She took his hand without hesitation. His skin was cool against hers, the bioluminescence brightening where they touched. As they moved together, the boundaries between them seemed to blur, his joy becoming hers, her curiosity flowing into him. I never want to leave, she whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around her. But your mission? My mission was to study new life forms. I'm doing that. The fact that she could no longer remember the specific parameters of her research didn't seem important. Later, as they lay entwined beneath a canopy that pulsed with living light, Thorne traced patterns on her skin. You're changing, he murmured. Is that bad? It's inevitable. Nyx changes all who come here. Something in his words should have alarmed her, but alarm required context, memories of danger, of caution. Those were fading like morning mist. The arrival of the second ship broke the idyll. Leona stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the small vessel touch down with far more control than her own crash landing. Someone came for you, Thorne said quietly beside her. Was that resignation in his voice? The ship's hatch opened. A tall man emerged, scanning the landscape before his gaze locked on Leona. Recognition flared in his eyes. Dr. Voss, thank God, he rushed toward her. We picked up your distress beacon. It took weeks to get approval for a rescue mission. Leona stared at him blankly. She knew him or had known him. His name danced just beyond reach. Leona, his smile faltered. It's me, Riker, your research partner. The name sparked no memory. She turned to Thorne, whose expression had grown guarded. He says he knows me, she said simply. Thorne's skin darkened to midnight blue. He does, he's from your world. Riker looked between them, confusion evident. Leona, what's going on? We need to assess your condition and get you home. Home? The word should have evoked something. Longing, relief, recognition. Instead, it felt hollow, meaningless compared to the vibrant reality of Nyx. I'm not sure I want to go, she said slowly. Riker's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? Of course you want to go home, your research, your career. But those things seemed like artifacts from another life now. As Riker continued speaking, Leona noticed Thorn watching him with an expression she hadn't seen before, something like resignation mixed with sorrow. In that moment, a terrible suspicion began to form in her mind. The memory gaps, the fatting connection to Earth, the perfect harmony of Nyxian society, it couldn't be coincidence. "Thorn," she said quietly, interrupting Riker's confused entreaties. "What's happening to me?" His amber eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, Thorn looked afraid. "We should talk," he said finally, "all of us." As they turned toward the settlement, Leona caught Riker rubbing his temple in confusion, as if trying to recall something important that had just slipped his mind. The first seeds of understanding took root in what remained of her scientific mind. Whatever was happening to her had already begun to happen to Riker too. And Thorn, beautiful, perfect Thorn, knew exactly why. The price of paradise. The three of them sat in Thorn's dwelling, the bioluminescent walls pulsing with anxious patterns that seemed to reflect their host's unease. Leona watched as Riker's eyes darted around the space, alternating between wonder and suspicion. "This place is remarkable," Riker murmured, reaching out to touch a surface that rippled with color at his contact. "The biological integration with architecture alone could revolutionize." He stopped suddenly, frowning. "What was I saying?" The momentary lapse confirmed Leona's growing suspicion. She turned to Thorn, whose skin had dimmed to a muted indigo. "Tell us the truth," she said quietly. "What is Nyx doing to us?" Thorn's eyes met hers, the amber depths filled with ancient sorrow. "It's not what Nyx is doing to you," he finally said. "It's what you're doing for Nyx." "Speak plainly," Riker demanded, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his confusion. Thorn rose, gesturing for them to follow. They exited his dwelling and walked a path Leona had never taken before, leading deep into a grove of massive trees whose trunks glowed with pulsing veins of light. At the center stood the largest tree Leona had ever seen, its base as wide as a small building. "This is the heart of Nyx," Thorn explained, placing a hand against the trunk. The entire tree brightened at his touch, sending waves of luminescence up into its branches. Not just a tree, a central nervous system, what you might call a planetary consciousness. "That's impossible," Riker began, but even as he spoke, his expression betrayed doubt. "Our world was dying once," Thorn continued. "Our sun began to fade millennia ago, providing less energy each cycle. We should have perished. Instead, we evolved." He turned to face them fully. "Nyx learned to draw energy from other sources." Leona felt a chill despite the warm air. "What sources?" "Experience, memory, emotion." Thorn's skin rippled with bands of apologetic blue, the electrical patterns of consciousness itself. "You're saying the planet feeds on our minds?" Riker asked incredulously. "Not consumes, transforms," Thorn corrected. "Your memories don't disappear. They become part of Nyx, sustaining us all." Leona's mind raced, assembling the pieces. "That's why your society is so harmonious. You've incorporated experiences from countless visitors." Thorn nodded. "Wisdom from 1,000 worlds, knowledge of mistakes made and overcome, joy, sorrow, triumph, all becoming substrate for our continued existence." "And in exchange we forget," she whispered. "Yes, the process is gradual, painless. Most visitors never realize what's happening." Riker stepped back, alarm flashing across his features. "This is theft. You're stealing our identities." "We take nothing that isn't freely given through connection," Thorn countered. "Every interaction, every moment of wonder or affection, these are exchanges of energy. The stronger the emotion, the more Nyx receives." Leona's thoughts turned to her deepening relationship with Thorn. Had that been calculated, a way to accelerate the process? As if reading her doubt, Thorn reached for her hand. "What I feel for you is real, Leona, but I won't lie, it has hastened the exchange." She pulled away, anger flaring. So every moment we've shared has been draining me, making me less myself. Or making you more like us, he suggested gently, free from the burdens of a painful past, present in each moment. At the cost of everything I am, Riker interrupted. I've been here less than a day and already I'm forgetting details of my own research. He turned to Leona, desperate. We need to leave, now. Leona looked between Riker and Thorn, torn. The rational part of her, what remained of the scientist she had been, knew Riker was right. This beautiful world was slowly erasing her. Yet another part, growing stronger daily, questioned why that was so terrible. What happens if we stay? She asked Thorn. His expression softened. Eventually, your old identities fade completely. You become fully part of Nyx, still yourselves but without the boundaries of your former existence. And if we leave? The process slows, then stops. You'll keep what remains of your memories but never recover what's already been given to Nyx. His skin darkened. And you'll never remember us clearly. The connections fade first. The implication hit her like physical pain. Leave and she would forget Thorn. Forget the profound connection they had formed. Yet stay, and Dr. Leona Voss, the woman who had dedicated her life to science and discovery, would cease to exist. I need time to think, she said finally. Riker paced the length of his ship, checking systems with increasingly agitated movements. We have enough fuel for the return journey, but only if we leave within the next 48 hours, he informed Leona, who stood silently by the viewport. After that, the orbital alignment shifts, and we'd need more power than we have. She nodded absently, watching the bioluminescent landscape pulse with life outside. Leona, you can't seriously be considering staying, Riker pressed. Everything you've worked for, your research, your career. I can't remember most of it, she admitted. The specifics of my work, my colleagues' names, even my childhood. They're like reflections in water, distorting when I try to grasp them. Riker's expression softened. All the more reason to leave before you lose more. But what if what I've lost doesn't matter, she challenged. Have you seen how they live here? No conflict, no struggle. Because they've stolen wisdom instead of earning it, Riker countered. Their harmony is built on the stolen experiences of others. It's parasitism dressed up as utopia. The accusation stung because part of her feared it might be true. Yet she couldn't reconcile that view with what she'd experienced of Thorn and his people, their gentleness, their genuine connection to each other and their world. I need to talk to Thorn again, she said finally. Riker grabbed her wrist as she turned to leave. The longer you're here, the harder it will be to choose to leave. You know that, right? She gently removed his hand. That's why I need to decide now, while I still can. She found Thorn at the edge of a glowing pool, his reflection shimmering in the luminescent water. He looked up as she approached, hope and resignation warring in his expression. You're leaving, he said simply. I haven't decided. She sat beside him, watching tiny creatures that resembled dragonflies dance across the water's surface, trailing light. I need to know something first. Have you done this before? Formed a connection with a visitor, knowing what it would cost them? Pain flickered across his features. Yes. The simple honesty of his answer surprised her. And some stayed, some left. His skin rippled with mournful blue. I remembered them all. They forgot me completely. That seems cruel. Is it crueler than never making a connection at all, never sharing joy because it might end? His amber eyes met hers. I sought you out after your crash because it's my role in our society to welcome visitors, to help them understand our ways. I didn't plan to care for you as I do. Leona stared into the pool, watching the play of light. If I leave, how much of this will I remember? The facts, perhaps, that you crash-landed, that you met a species with bioluminescent properties, but the feeling of it, his voice caught. The way the night looks when we dance, the taste of morn fruit at sunrise, the sensation when our minds touch, those will fade first. And if I stay, what happens to Riker? He would be given the same choice you have, stay or leave. But he's already losing memories, and he's been here less than a day. Thorne nodded slowly. The process affects some more quickly than others. Those with analytical minds often experience it faster, perhaps because they store information differently. The realization hit her. As scientists, both she and Riker were particularly vulnerable. The very mental patterns that made them good researchers made them perfect fuel for Nix. "It's not fair," she whispered. "Few truly important choices are," Thorne replied. She found Riker in a state of increasing distress when she returned to the ship. He was frantically recording voice notes, reciting facts about his life and research. Birth date October 17th, doctoral dissertation on xenobiological adaptation in low-gravity environments. Mother's name, he hesitated, panic flashing across his features. Mother's name. Riker, Leona said gently. He looked up, eyes wild. "I can't remember my own mother's name, Leona. Do you understand what's happening? We're being erased." "I know," she sat across from him. Thorne explained everything. "Then you know we have to leave, immediately." "I'm not sure that's the right choice for me," she admitted. Riker stared at her in disbelief. "You'd willingly surrender your identity, everything you are." "I'd be trading one identity for another," she countered. "Maybe a simpler one, maybe a happier one." That's the planet talking. The real Leona Voss, the scientist I've worked with for 4 years, would never choose ignorance over knowledge. His words struck home. 4 years. She couldn't remember working with him for more than. The timeline slipped away from her. "Tell me about our work together," she said suddenly. "Help me remember." Riker's expression softened with relief. For the next hour, he detailed their shared history, research projects, discoveries, even arguments they'd had over methodologies. Some of it sparked recognition. Most felt like stories about a stranger. "We were going to revolutionize xenobiology," he concluded. "Your theories about cross-species communication laid the groundwork for this entire mission. If you stay here, all that potential is lost." Leona closed her eyes, trying to feel the weight of that loss. It should devastate her. Instead, it felt distant, academic, like reading about a historical figure's missed opportunities. "What if the work doesn't matter as much as being happy?" she asked quietly. "Of course it matters. Progress matters." Riker ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "And what about the people who care about you, your family?" "My parents died years ago," she said, the memory surprisingly clear. "I have colleagues, not close friends. My work has been my life." She met his gaze directly. "That's the tragedy, isn't it? I've spent so much time studying life that I've barely lived it." "So live it when we get home. Change your priorities. But do it as yourself, not as some memory-wiped version who doesn't even know what she's lost." His words held truth, but so did the peace she'd found on Nix, a peace she'd never known before. "I need to make my final decision," she said, rising. "The ship leaves tomorrow." Riker nodded grimly. "With or without you." Dawn broke over Nix in ripples of pink and gold, the landscape responding with answering pulses of light. Leona stood at the border between the settlement and the landing area where Riker's ship waited, engines humming with pre-flight preparations. Thorne approached from one direction as Riker emerged from his vessel from the other. Both stopped several paces from her, giving her space for this final choice. "The connection between us will remain part of Nix forever," Thorne said softly. "Even if you go. Your research will change how humanity understands alien life," Riker countered. "But only if you return to share it." Leona closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the living planet beneath her feet. She had spent the night in solitary reflection, walking the luminescent forests and trying to weigh what she knew against what she felt. She opened her eyes and turned to Riker. "My research module, it's still in my crashed ship." He nodded cautiously. damaged but salvageable. Good, she took a deep breath. Because I've recorded everything I've learned about Nyx, about the planetary consciousness, the energy exchange, all of it. If I go with you, that knowledge returns to Earth. Understanding dawned in Riker's eyes. You've made your choice. Yes, she turned to Thorn, whose skin had dimmed to the deep blue of sorrow. I'm staying. Leona, no, Riker protested. You can't. I'm making a trade, she interrupted. My research goes back to Earth, but I stay here where I've found something I never had before. She reached for Thorn's hand. Connection, purpose beyond observation. You won't remember your work, Riker argued desperately. The contributions you've made. And that's the price, she acknowledged. But someone else will build on my research. Science continues without me, and I'll be part of something equally important here. Riker looked between them, defeat settling in his features. I can't force you to leave. No, she approached him, placed a data crystal in his palm. Take this. Make sure it reaches the right people. Tell them, she paused, tell them I made a conscious choice. After a moment of internal struggle, Riker nodded. I'll make sure they understand. Their goodbye was brief. Already, details of their shared past were fading from her mind. As his ship rose into the atmosphere, Leona felt a momentary pang for the life she was surrendering. Then Thorn's hand found hers, his skin brightening at the contact. Are you certain? He asked. She turned to face him, the settlement glowing behind him like a constellation brought to Earth. No, she admitted, but certainty is overrated. Connection is what matters. As they walked back toward the heart of Nyx, Leona felt the burden of her old identity continuing to lighten. With each step, the planet took another small piece of who she had been, and in exchange, showed her who she might become. The name Dr. Leona Voss would one day mean nothing to her, but the joy of this moment, the sensation of belonging to something vaster than herself, these feelings would become part of Nyx forever. And perhaps that was enough of an immortality to satisfy even a scientist's soul.